General Lucas Rain scanned the horizon through his helmet's visor, his every nerve on edge. His son, Oliver, stood a few steps behind, his curious gaze darting from the holographic map displayed on the portable console to the strange, jagged rocks surrounding them. For a 10-year-old, Oliver was unusually quiet, a stark contrast to his typical, mischievous demeanor. "Dad, why does it smell like metal here?" Oliver asked, his voice crackling through the comm link. His father turned slightly, his jaw tightening beneath the visor. "It's the moon's surface oxidizing in thin atmosphere pockets." "Stay close to me, Oliver." "No wandering." Oliver didn't respond, his small fingers hovering over the console's controls. The boy's fascination with technology was relentless, often to the irritation of the soldiers under Rain's command. But this time, Oliver obeyed, his instincts sensing the unspoken tension in his father's voice. The ground beneath them rumbled faintly. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Rain caught it. His years of experience warned him of the danger before his sensors confirmed it. "Incoming!" Rain barked. He grabbed Oliver and dove behind a jagged outcropping just as a blinding energy blast erupted nearby, sending shards of rock and dust cascading around them. Oliver yelped, his small frame trembling against his father's armored chest. Rain peeked over the edge of the rock, his rifle already in hand, scanning the area for hostiles. From the dust emerged figures, tall, angular, and clad in shimmering armor that refracted light like fractured glass. Their movements were unerringly synchronized, their weapons glowing with unearthly energy. Galactic Empire soldiers. "Oliver, listen to me," Rain said urgently, gripping his son's shoulders. "Do exactly as I say. Don't argue, don't hesitate." Oliver nodded, wide-eyed but resolute. His father had trained him for emergencies, though neither had expected those lessons to be tested so soon. Rain fired a volley of shots, forcing the aliens to scatter. He pushed Oliver toward a narrow crevice between the rocks. "Crawl through and head for the ship. Tell Blair to initiate the distress beacon." "What about you?" Oliver asked, his voice cracking. "I'll hold them off." "Go!" Oliver hesitated for a heartbeat too long. The hesitation cost them. A second squad of aliens flanked their position, cutting off the escape route. Rain swung his rifle around, his shots precise and unyielding, but the sheer number of enemies overwhelmed him. A sudden jolt of energy surged through the air, and Rain crumpled to the ground, immobilized by a pulse weapon. Oliver screamed, rushing toward his father, only to be yanked back by one of the aliens. "Let him go!" Oliver shouted, thrashing against the soldier's unyielding grip. The alien who appeared to be their leader stepped forward. His tall, sinewy frame exuded authority, his iridescent eyes scanning Oliver with cold detachment. "Human offspring. Curious. The general spawn will serve as an excellent bargaining chip." "No!" Rain roared, his voice strained as he struggled against the paralysis. "Don't touch him." The alien leader tilted his head, as if amused. "You are in no position to dictate terms, General Rain. The Empire does not bargain with insects. Your offspring will provide the information we need, or he will suffer the consequences." Oliver glared at the alien, his mind racing. He wasn't helpless. His father had taught him that much. But now, it wasn't just about escape. It was about survival. The soldiers dragged Oliver toward their sleek, obsidian ship, its sharp contours blending eerily into the rocky landscape. Rain's cries echoed as the ship's doors closed behind his son, sealing him inside. Inside the alien vessel, Oliver's heart pounded as he was shoved into a containment cell. The walls hummed with energy, and the faint glow of the force field illuminated the boy's determined expression. The cell wasn't designed for someone like him, small, nimble, and entirely too clever for his own good. As the door slid shut, Oliver scanned the room, noting every detail. The control panel outside his cell, the pattern of the energy field, the faint hum of the ship's engines beneath his feet. He didn't cry. Instead, he reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the small multi-tool he always carried. The alien leader, Captain Soren, entered the room, his imposing figure filling the doorway. He regarded Oliver with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "Tell me, human child," Soren said, his voice a deep, resonant growl. "Where is your father's fleet?" Oliver crossed his arms, glaring defiantly. "I'm not telling you anything, shiny pants." Soren's expression darkened. He stepped closer, the force field crackling ominously as he gestured toward the control panel. "Your insolence is amusing but will not save you. Perhaps a demonstration of pain will loosen your tongue." Oliver's eyes flicked to the panel as Soren manipulated it. His sharp mind memorized the sequence of buttons the alien pressed, noting the subtle delay between commands. "You think you can scare me?" Oliver said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his chest. "My dad's coming for me, and when he does, you're going to wish you never messed with the reins." Soren chuckled, a sound that reverberated through the room like grinding metal. "Your confidence is misplaced, child. Your father is powerless against the Empire." Oliver watched as Soren left, leaving him alone in the cell. As soon as the door slid shut, Oliver pulled out his multi-tool and began working on the force field's power conduit. Sparks flew as he carefully dismantled the casing, his small hands moving with practiced precision. Meanwhile, aboard his command ship, Rain paced the bridge, his fury barely contained. Captain Andrew Blair, his loyal second-in-command, stood nearby, monitoring the alien ship's trajectory. "They won't hurt him," Blair said, though his own voice betrayed uncertainty. "He's too valuable. They'll use him to get to me," Rain said, his fist clenched. "And when they do, I'll make them regret it." Blair hesitated. "What's the plan, sirs?" Rain's eyes burned with determination. "We track them. We find their weakness. And then we bring my son home, no matter what it takes." Back on the alien ship, Oliver grinned triumphantly as the force field flickered and died. He slipped out of the cell, his small figure blending into the shadows of the dimly lit corridors. The ship's layout was confusing, but Oliver's sharp memory and instinct guided him. The boy wasn't just escaping. He was planning his next move. The hum of the alien ship resonated through the walls, a low, unsettling vibration that reminded Oliver he was deep inside enemy territory. His small frame moved silently through the dimly lit corridor, the stolen plasma knife clutched tightly in his hand. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but that didn't matter. He had already made up his mind. He wasn't just going to escape. He was going to fight back. The air smelled faintly of ozone, and the walls shimmered with an otherworldly iridescence. The ship's interior was a maze of sleek corridors and strange symbols glowing faintly in alien script. Oliver glanced at them as he passed, trying to decipher patterns that might guide him to the control room. His heart raced, but his determination kept his fear at bay. He turned a corner and nearly collided with a soldier. The alien was tall, its elongated limbs wrapped in armor that pulsed faintly with energy. For a split second, they froze, staring at each other. Then, the alien reached for its weapon. Oliver moved first. He ducked low, slipping past the soldier's legs, and slashed at the control panel beside him with the plasma knife. Sparks erupted, and the corridor lights flickered. The alien shouted in its guttural tongue, but Oliver was already sprinting away, weaving through the darkened halls. His lungs burned as he ran, his small frame giving him just enough advantage to evade pursuit. He dove into an open maintenance shaft, pulling the grate closed behind him. The sound of heavy footsteps passed by, and he held his breath, waiting until the noise faded. Inside the cramped shaft, Oliver allowed himself a moment to catch his breath. His mind raced as he considered his options. The ship was massive, and he couldn't afford to wander aimlessly. He needed to find something, anything, that would give him leverage against his captors. A faint whirring sound caught his attention, and he followed it, crawling through the narrow space until he reached a ventilation grill. Peering through, he saw a room filled with glowing consoles, and a large central screen displaying a holographic map of the surrounding star system. This was it, the communications hub. Oliver carefully removed the grill and dropped into the room, landing silently on the polished floor. The consoles hummed softly, their alien characters pulsing in rhythmic patterns. He approached the central console, his fingers brushing over the strange symbols. The interface was unlike anything he'd seen before, but its logic wasn't entirely foreign. He pulled the multi-tool from his pocket and pried open a panel beneath the console. Wires and circuits glinted in the dim light. Taking a deep breath, he began working, his small hands moving with precision as he connected his makeshift device to the ship's systems. Come on, he muttered under his breath. The screen flickered, and a series of distorted images appeared. He adjusted the device, tuning it like a radio, until a familiar voice crackled through. "This is General Lucas Rain of the United Earth Fleet. Identify yourself." "Dad!" Oliver whispered, his voice trembling with relief. "It's me. I'm on the alien ship. I'm okay, but I don't know how long I can stay hidden." "Oliver," Rain's voice was both frantic and relieved. "Where are you? Can you give me coordinates?" Oliver glanced at the holographic map and relayed the ship's position. "I've been sabotaging their systems. If you attack now, they'll be vulnerable. Hold tight, son. We're coming for you." The connection cut abruptly as the room's light shifted to an angry red, and a blaring alarm echoed through the halls. Oliver's chest tightened. They had traced the signal. He scrambled to disconnect his device, but the door hissed open, and Captain Soren stepped inside. The alien's towering form seemed to fill the room, his glowing eyes locking onto Oliver with cold fury. "You've been quite the nuisance, child," Soren growled, his voice low and menacing. "But your games end here." Oliver backed away, gripping the plasma knife tightly. "You're afraid, aren't you? You know my dad's coming, and you know you can't stop him." Soren tilted his head, as if amused. "Your father's fleet is no match for the Empire. But you've proven resourceful. A pity your potential will go to waste." The alien lunged, and Oliver darted to the side, narrowly avoiding the clawed hand that swiped at him. He dove under the central console, slashing at the power cables. Sparks flew, and the room plunged into darkness, the holographic map flickering and disappearing. Soren roared in frustration, his glowing eyes the only source of light. Oliver used the cover of darkness to slip past him, sprinting back into the corridor. He didn't look back. The alarms continued to blare as he navigated the ship, his mind racing. The damage he had caused would slow them down, but it wouldn't be enough. He needed to do something bigger, something that would cripple the ship entirely. As he ran, he stumbled upon a doorway marked with strange symbols. Inside, he found a room filled with towering cylinders, each one pulsating with a faint blue light. It didn't take a genius to figure out what this was: the power core. Oliver's pulse quickened. If he could disable the core, it would give his father's fleet a chance to strike. But the room was heavily guarded by a force field, and he didn't have the tools to disable it. He searched the room, his eyes falling on a maintenance terminal. Approaching it cautiously, he studied the controls. The alien language was still unfamiliar, but the symbols were starting to make sense. He pressed a sequence of buttons, and the force field flickered briefly. "That's it," he whispered, a grin spreading across his face. The sound of approaching footsteps snapped him back to reality. He worked quickly, overriding the controls until the force field collapsed. The cylinders hummed louder, their light intensifying as he began tampering with the core's main conduits. The door burst open, and Soren stormed in, flanked by 2 soldiers. "You are remarkably persistent," Soren said, his voice icy. "But this ends now." Oliver didn't hesitate. He activated a series of commands on the terminal, and the cylinders began to pulse erratically. A low rumble shook the room as warning lights flashed. "You might want to run," Oliver said, his grin defiant. Soren's eyes widened as he realized what the boy had done. The alien lunged, but Oliver was already moving, diving through a maintenance hatch just as the power core began to overload. The explosion that followed shook the entire ship, and Oliver found himself tumbling through the narrow shaft, his ears ringing. He landed hard in another corridor, his body aching but intact. As he struggled to his feet, the ship's system sputtered, and the alarms grew weaker. He could feel the vibrations of distant explosions as his father's fleet began its assault. Oliver smiled despite the pain. He wasn't safe yet, but he had done his part. Now! It was up to his dad to finish the job. The space around the alien vessel was a battlefield of flashing lights and rumbling detonations. The United Earth Fleet, led by General Lucas Rain, descended upon the Galactic Empire's ship with relentless precision. Streams of plasma bolts and missiles streaked through the void, tearing into the alien hull and forcing their defenses to falter. On the bridge of his flagship, Rain stood at the command console, his face set in a grim mask of determination. The holographic display before him showed the alien ship's weakening shields, flickering erratically in the wake of Oliver's sabotage. "Focus fire on their weapons array," Rain ordered, his voice calm but unyielding. "We need to cripple their offensive capabilities before they recover." Captain Blair, standing at his side, relayed the command to the fleet. "They're rerouting power to auxiliary systems. Whatever Oliver did, it's thrown them into disarray." Rain nodded, his mind racing. His son's survival depended on the success of this assault. Every second counted. Inside the alien vessel, chaos reigned. Soldiers scrambled through the corridors, shouting orders in their guttural language as systems malfunctioned around them. Fires raged in several sections, and the ship shuddered violently with each new impact from the Earth Fleet's barrage. Oliver crouched behind a twisted beam in the maintenance sector, his small figure bathed in the flickering light of a ruptured energy conduit. His escape route had been cut off by the blast he'd triggered, leaving him stranded deep within the enemy ship. He winced as another explosion rocked the vessel, sending a shower of sparks raining down. He pulled his father's comm device from his pocket, the connection barely holding through the interference. "Dad, I'm still inside. The core's unstable, but I can't get to an escape pod." Rain's heart clenched at the sound of his son's voice. "Stay put, Oliver. I'm coming for you. There's no time. The whole ship's going to blow," Oliver said, his voice urgent. "You have to focus on taking them down. Forget about me." "Not a chance," Rain growled, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Blair, prep a strike team. We're boarding that ship." Blair hesitated, his expression torn. "Sir, the risks." "I don't care about the risks." Rain snapped, his fist slamming onto the console. "That's my son in there." Blair nodded, his voice steady as he issued the orders. Moments later, a sleek assault shuttle launched from the flagship, weaving through the chaos of the battlefield toward the crippled alien vessel. Inside the shuttle, Rain stood among his men, his grip tight on his rifle. The soldiers around him, hardened veterans all, exchanged glances but said nothing. They understood the stakes. The shuttle latched onto the alien hull with a metallic thud, and the airlock hissed open. Rain led the charge, his weapon raised as they breached the enemy corridors. Alien soldiers met them head-on, their plasma weapons lighting up the narrow space in a deadly exchange of fire. Rain's movements were precise, his shots finding their mark with ruthless efficiency. The team pushed forward, carving a path through the ship toward the section where Oliver's signal had been traced. Oliver, meanwhile, had taken shelter in a small utility room. The ship's groaning structure and the distant echoes of gunfire filled the air, each sound a reminder of how precarious the situation had become. He activated the comm device again. "Dad, there's a vent near the aft section that might lead me closer to the pods. I think I can make it. Hold your position." Rain barked through the static. "We're almost there." But Oliver couldn't wait. The ship's core was failing rapidly, and he knew his father would never leave without him. If he didn't move, both of them could be trapped. He slipped into the vent, the metal cold against his palms and knees as he crawled through the cramped space. The vibrations from the battle outside grew stronger, shaking the ship with increasing intensity. On the bridge, Captain Soren observed the chaos with a cold, calculating gaze. His ship was dying, its systems unraveling under the combined weight of Oliver's sabotage and the Earth fleet's relentless attack. Yet he refused to yield. "Redirect all remaining power to propulsion," Soren commanded. "We will not fall to these primitives." "But the core," one of his subordinates protested. "Do it," Soren roared. The alien vessel lurched violently as its engines roared to life, propelling it toward the edge of the battlefield. Rain's strike team staggered, bracing themselves against the walls as the ship's movement threw them off balance. "Blair, report." Rain shouted into his comm. "They're trying to retreat, sir," Blair's voice crackled. "But their core's critical. If they keep this up, they'll destroy themselves and anyone too close." Rain's jaw tightened. "We need to extract Oliver now." The strike team pressed on, finally reaching the maintenance sector where Oliver's signal was strongest. Rain's heart pounded as he called out, "Oliver, where are you?" A small figure emerged from the shadows, dust-covered and wide-eyed. "Dad!" Oliver cried, his voice breaking with relief. Rain dropped his weapon, rushing forward to pull his son into a tight embrace. "I've got you," he said, his voice hoarse. "You're safe now." The moment was fleeting. The ship shuddered violently, a deafening alarm signaling the core's imminent failure. "We need to move," one of the soldiers shouted. Rain scooped Oliver into his arms, leading the team back toward their extraction point. The corridors were a blur of flashing lights and collapsing structures as the ship tore itself apart. They reached the shuttle just as another explosion rocked the vessel, flames licking at their heels as the airlock sealed shut. The shuttle disengaged, speeding away from the dying ship. On the flagship, Blair watched the alien vessel collapse in on itself, a blinding burst of light marking its destruction. "The target is neutralized," he reported, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Rain sat in the shuttle's hold, clutching Oliver tightly as the boy clung to him. For the first time since the battle began, he allowed himself to breathe. "We did it, Dad," Oliver said softly, his voice filled with both exhaustion and pride. Rain nodded, his expression softening as he looked down at his son. "Yeah, we did. But it was you who gave us the chance." Oliver smiled faintly, his eyes closing as the adrenaline finally ebbed. Rain held him close, the hum of the shuttle's engines a quiet reminder that, despite the odds, they had survived. The flagship's medical bay buzzed with controlled urgency as Oliver was examined by a medic. General Rain stood nearby, his eyes fixed on his son, relief softening his usual stern demeanor. Oliver, his face streaked with grime, but alight with determination, endured the medic's poking and prodding without complaint. "Can I go now?" Oliver asked impatiently, glancing at his father. "Not until they clear you," Rain replied, his tone gruff but affectionate. Before Oliver could respond, the ship's comm system crackled to life. "General Rain, report to the bridge. We've picked up a distress signal from the fleet." Rain's eyes hardened instantly. He gave Oliver's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Stay here. I'll be back soon." As Rain made his way to the bridge, the remnants of the battle filled the view screens. The alien vessel's destruction had scattered debris across the sector, but the fight wasn't over. Smaller enemy ships, seemingly uncoordinated but relentless, were harrying the Earth fleet. "Status report," Rain ordered as he stepped onto the bridge. Blair turned from the console, his expression grim. "The alien reinforcements are probing our lines, trying to exploit the chaos. We've lost 2 frigates and several fighters. They're playing for time." Rain's jaw tightened. "Time for what?" "Unknown, sir, but they're keeping their distance." "It's almost as if—" Blair hesitated, then gestured to the tactical display. "Look at this formation. They're stalling us." Rain stared at the screen, his sharp mind piecing together the fragments of the enemy's strategy. His heart sank as realization dawned. They're waiting for a larger fleet to arrive. Blair nodded grimly. We've intercepted partial communications, suggesting a massive Empire fleet is en route. If they arrive before we can regroup. Rain's fist clenched. We won't survive a prolonged engagement. Send the order to consolidate our forces and prepare for a tactical retreat. Sir, what about the civilians on Haven Colony? Blair asked. Rain's gaze flicked to the star chart. Haven Colony, a small outpost on the edge of the system, was directly in the path of the approaching Empire fleet. He couldn't abandon them. Prep a detachment to defend the colony, Rain said after a pause. I'll lead it myself. Blair's eyes widened. Sir, with respect, your place is here. My place is wherever I'm needed, Rain replied firmly. Blair, you have the bridge. Back in the medical bay, Oliver listened intently to the commotion outside. He could sense the tension thick in the air and knew something was wrong. Slipping away from the medic's watchful eyes, he darted through the corridors, his small frame unnoticed in the bustling chaos. He found his father in the shuttle bay, overseeing preparations for the mission to Haven Colony. Oliver's presence didn't escape Rain's notice for long. Oliver, Rain said, his voice a mix of exasperation and worry. What are you doing here? You're going to fight, aren't you? Oliver asked, his eyes wide with concern. Rain knelt to meet his son's gaze. I have to. People are counting on us. Then take me with you, Oliver said, his voice steady. I can help. I know their systems, their tactics. No, Rain interrupted, his tone final. You've done enough, son. You've already saved lives today. But... No buts, Rain said, placing a hand on Oliver's shoulder. Stay here, where it's safe. Reluctantly, Oliver nodded, though the fire in his eyes didn't fade. The shuttle launched moments later, carrying Rain and his detachment toward Haven Colony. As they approached, the scale of the threat became clear. Dozens of alien ships were already in the area, their sleek, menacing forms orbiting the colony like vultures. Rain's voice cut through the calm chatter. All units, engage at will. Protect the colony at all costs. The battle erupted in a cacophony of light and sound. Rain's shuttle weaved through the chaos, deploying ground troops to reinforce the colony's defenses. The aliens fought with ruthless efficiency, but the Earth forces held their ground, their determination unshaken. On board the flagship, Oliver couldn't sit idle. Using the knowledge he gleaned from his time on the alien vessel, he accessed the tactical systems. His small hands danced over the controls, identifying weak points in the enemy formation. Commander Blair, he said, his voice startling the officer. I can help you target their lead ship. It's coordinating the smaller vessels. Blair hesitated for only a moment. Show me. Oliver's insights proved invaluable. With his guidance, the flagship delivered a devastating blow to the enemy command ship, throwing their ranks into disarray. Meanwhile, on the surface of Haven Colony, Rain led his troops with unyielding resolve. Plasma bolts lit the darkened skies as the defenders repelled wave after wave of alien forces. Rain's rifle never wavered, his voice a constant anchor for his men. Hold the line, he shouted, his words cutting through the din of battle. We can't let them break through. Just as the tide seemed to turn in their favor, the skies above shimmered ominously. A massive alien dreadnought emerged from hyperspace, its silhouette dwarfing the Earth fleet's ships. The sight was enough to chill even the bravest hearts. Blair's voice crackled through Rain's calm general. The dreadnought has arrived. We're out of options. Rain's mind raced. The colony was still evacuating civilians, and the dreadnought's firepower would obliterate them in minutes. Target the dreadnought's engines, Rain ordered. If we can disable it, we'll buy enough time to finish the evacuation. Oliver, still on the flagship, overheard the plan. His eyes narrowed as an idea formed. Without waiting for permission, he accessed the ship's comm systems. Dad, Oliver said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. I can create a distraction. Let me take control of one of their damaged ships. No, Rain barked. It's too dangerous. It's the only way. Oliver insisted. Trust me, Dad. I can do this. Rain's silence was heavy, but finally he relented. Be careful, he said, his voice tight. With Blair's reluctant approval, Oliver commandeered a damaged alien fighter through the flagship's remote systems. Guiding the vessel toward the dreadnought, he activated its remaining weapons, drawing the massive ship's attention. The dreadnought turned, its cannons firing at the small fighter. Oliver dodged as best he could, the controls responding sluggishly. But his gamble paid off. The distraction gave Rain's forces the opening they needed. Rain's team launched a coordinated strike on the dreadnought's engines, targeting its vulnerable conduits. Explosions rippled through the massive ship, and it began to list, its power faltering. Retreat, Rain ordered as the colony's final transports lifted off. The Earth fleet regrouped, leaving the crippled dreadnought adrift. On board the flagship, Oliver slumped in his chair, exhausted but victorious. When Rain returned, he swept his son into a fierce hug. You scared me half to death, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I had to help, Oliver replied, his voice muffled against his father's chest. Rain smiled faintly, pride shining through his exhaustion. You're as stubborn as your old man. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. Still, as father and son stood together, their bond stronger than ever, they knew they could face whatever came next together.